Hi, everybody. I'm Valerie Abrahamian, and I'm the IEP Navigator, and I help parents get the education their child needs to thrive both in school and in life after high school. And today's Facebook Live is entitled Find Your Voice. So, what I want to talk about today is our situation in distance learning for our kids. So, where are we? Most states are still undecided. It looks as if we're going to be either choosing a hybrid program, a hybrid schedule, or which means that kids go to school part time in school and part time outside of school. So, so that means that they're going to have half distance learning, half in school, actually learning in the school building. So the other option would be staying home and receiving a full schedule of distance learning. So, really, both of those options are not really great options for our children on IEPs. So let's break both of those options down. So, distance learning, if the schools remain closed, this is what it's going to look like. So, it's going to depend upon your particular superintendent and what that superintendent decides to do in terms of training those teachers in that district how to provide an equitable distance learning plan for teachers of special ed teachers and really all teachers for our kids on IEPs. Now, when you look at it, they did recently, Harvard did a survey on 800,000 students, and they determined that that it's going to end up on average that general ed students are going to have lost 7 months of at least 7 months. It will be a year if we go into distance learning again, of a regression in terms of learning. 7 months regression, and that's where we are now. If we continue that, it's going to increase. So that's general ed. So now think about our kids in special ed and how much more they are impacted with distance learning or a virtual model, because kids on IEPs, most kids on IEPs cannot access education in a virtual technology model because they have special needs. General ed kids, they can pretty much adapt. Kids that very high functioning children on IEPs, kids that love technology, are adapt to technology and would rather learn through technology, those kids on IEPs are thriving. That's a very small percentage of the 7 million kids on IEPs across the nation. The majority of children on IEPs are not receiving an equitable distance learning plan because they can't even access what there is online. Now, to top that off, teachers, special ed teachers are not getting online. They're not teaching instruction, live instruction online. They're not doing that. So it's up to each superintendent on what they are going to require their school district and their teachers and special ed teachers to do next year. And we have no idea what that's going to be. So in terms of locally where I'm at, the superintendent is not training the teachers. They're still not training the teachers. And here we are in the middle of the summer going into July, and he's still not training the teachers on distance learning. Even though he says that we are going to open up in the fall, full opening for school buildings, yet he's still not training the teachers on virtual schooling. So how are the teachers supposed to provide a quality education virtually for our kids? It's not going to happen. So this is in California, and this is in Southern California in the Inland Empire, what's happening around that area, as well as the San Diego area, the Inland Empire area, the Orange County area. This is the typical scenario of what's happening here. Now, of course, there are districts that are doing better than others, but that's what's happening here. I put a link in this Facebook Live for a video from Dr. Pam Popper. Dr. Pam Popper. She's in Ohio, And it's a great video, chock full of lots of facts and information about distance learning, about schools, about the damage that it's going to take on our children's social and emotional qualities and their life of having to go to school in a model of this hybrid model. Now let's talk about that other option, the hybrid model, which is going to look like our kids are going to go to school. They're going to be taking their thermometer. They're going to have their temperature taken the second they walk in the door. They're going to have to have their masks on the second they walk in the door. They're going to have to be social distance 6 feet apart the entire time they're in school. The desks are going to be 6 feet apart. They're going to have partitions wherever they go. They are not going to be allowed to go to recess or lunch. They're going to have to eat in the classrooms. They're going to be monitored in Ohio. Dr. Popper announced that the governor of Ohio is requiring, when schools reopen, that every child that attends the school buildings will be wearing a tracker on their wrist. They are going to be tracked throughout the day if they are being social distance 6 feet apart. How many kids don't do that or don't follow that rule? They're actually going to be tracked during the time they're at school. So now we're seeing the implementation of the tracking system, which I don't know if some of or any of you have heard about the tracking system, but it's also being introduced to people who have had COVID, are being tracked to the people they've been in contact with. So now they're introducing that to our children in school. So that's what's happening in Ohio. And she also is very concerned about this kind of attitude, what we're instilling in our children in this kind of environment where they're going to have to cover their faces. The teachers are going to have their faces covered. How are teachers going to teach curriculum when you can't see your teacher's face or you can't see a child's face? How are they going to learn social emotional skills? Now, if this is going to impact a general ed student's social emotional skills, how on earth is this going to impact children on IEPs, special needs children on IEPs who already have huge deficits and disabilities regarding social emotional skills? They need to read faces. They need to learn how to take perspective taking. They need to learn to see people's, their lips moving, kids with speech and language deficits and speech and language delays. This is going to cut them off from their increasing their communication and their language skills from typical behavior of kids in school. So we have these two options that we're looking at, parents. The stay-at-home and distance learning, where pretty much children on IEPs will pretty much, it's looking like, continue to look like April, May, and June of last school year in the spring. Or we're going to go back in a hybrid model, and it's going to look pretty much like that kind of a regime enforced on school campuses for children of all ages. That's pretty disheartening. Now, so that's why I'm talking about find your voice. Parents and kids on IEPs, we need to find our voice to be able to enforce our rights under IDEA. Because parents, this is huge. We have rights. We have IDEA, a federal law behind us that we can enforce, that we can stand upon, that we can say, our child has an IEP, and we are requesting our IEP be implemented, whether going back to school or whether in distance learning. The IEPs are not being implemented, parents. They are not. It's a violation of federal law. General ed children don't have federal law behind them. A general ed parent has no rights to go and say, I protest, I oppose these two options. I'm standing on my federal law for my general ed child. There is none. But us parents, of kids on IEPs, we have federal law IDEA to stand upon. And it's a huge law that meets the needs of our child in terms of equal access to curriculum, having their needs met no matter what those needs are in terms of their disability that's impeding their education. And that it must be, the IEP document is a legally binding document that must be implemented, or it's a violation of federal law. So parents, we need to find our voice. We need to learn how to enforce our rights under IDEA, which is what I teach, which is what I do as an advocate who trains parents how to do just that. And if you go on my Facebook page, Advocates for Angels, you'll find lots of, or my website, advocatesforangels.com. I have many services that I provide to train and teach parents, to empower them to find their voice and to implement their rights under IDEA. So, I'm extremely concerned though at this time, because if we see our general ed students' rights being impeded upon this aggressively in a hybrid model of returning to the school grounds, what on earth do you think they're going to be doing for special needs children? This is very concerning to me, parents. Because special needs children, even though we have federal law, we say we have federal law, well, since the early 70s when IDEA came into effect, it hasn't really been enforced. It has not, because children on IEPs are discriminated against. Kids with disabilities are discriminated against. They're made to feel less than. They're made to feel not equal. It's not a diversified situation where they have equal rights. They're bullied. IEPs are not implemented constantly across the nation. IDEA has never been fully funded since it was enacted into law in the early 70s. So parents have always been the ones tasked to enforce their rights under IDEA by holding school districts accountable, by writing compliance complaints, by having IEP meetings, by holding dispute resolutions, by being actually the supervisor and the coach of their IEP team at the school site in terms of their child's special education program. And parents who don't know how to do that, those kids aren't receiving their IEP. Those kids aren't receiving an education. Those goals and objectives are not being worked on, because if parents, we aren't enforcing it and overseeing it and making sure that these things are happening at the school site level, and having the district special education department, your representative from the district, come to your IEP meetings and help you to make sure your child is receiving educational benefit under an IEP, most likely your child is not and will continue to regress or stay the same, and that gap of education will never be closed. So that is the situation with IDEA, and it always has been, which is why I do what I do as an advocate, to empower the 7 million parents across the nation of those kids that are on IEPs. But nevertheless, that was before, and now we're even in a more disheartening and quite alarming situation with what's going on in our society, in the nation, and in education today. So that's my topic for today. Parents, find your voice. I welcome you and invite you to join any one of my programs. I have the IEP Parent Brigade. That is a monthly membership in which I help you. I give you all the tools you need. I give you the scripts, the emails, the words to say, and how to start finding your voice and holding your local school district accountable, as well as I'm going to be launching my Ultimate IEP program in July, which is a much more intensive program that will teach you your rights, parents, from A to Z, from the beginning to dispute resolution, on how to win your child's services and the program your child needs to thrive. So that's my Facebook Live for today, parents. Please find your voice and start thinking about these things. Start thinking about how you're going to address next school year in the fall. And I love you guys. Stay well, stay safe, and I will see you next Monday.